Okay, today I'm looking into film theory. Thanos was wrong. He cannot snap. So when we get into the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Okay, wait, there.
Thanos, buddy, I love you, but after all these movies and all that effort to get those Infinity Stones, your big triumphant moment where you vaporize half the universe finally comes around and you choose to snap? Snap. I mean, come on, we're not all Picasso here, but it's just uninspired. Think of all the other things you could have done. The Thanos clap. The Thanos punch the sky. The Thanos dab. A little dated, but still relevant with the youngsters. The Thanos shadow puppet. The Thanos American Sign Language. It would be great for building awareness of other forms of communication. No? None of those? Well, that's just uncalled for. No one asked for the Thanos middle finger salute. Well, now you're just being childish.
Possible.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to
Film
Film Theory, the show that makes being a know-it-all about all your favorite franchises a snap. Now that we've all had time to sit back and reflect on the glory that was Avengers
Hearing
Infinity
snap
War, I
makes me
want
want
to bring
to
up
snap.
something that's been bugging me about it. Don't get me wrong, I love this movie. It was basically the Marvel Cinematic Universe meets Survivor All-Stars. I mean, I'm sitting there in the theater seeing how many of my favorite Marvel characters are in this thing, and I can't tell where my own gleeful drool ends and the fake butter flavoring on my popcorn begins. Yet, in spite of all of that, there's one part of this movie that I found just a bit too implausible to let go. And when I think back about it, I actually let a lot of things go for this movie. I mean, Heimdall can see everything but Mrs. Thanos' shit. Sure, we all make mistakes. Thor can just jam
Oh my god, I
his
was
eye into his socket and see again.
I haven't
Whatever,
watched
I
the
guess
movie.
he's a god, the mortal loves to apply to it.
And I know
Doctor
it's like
Strange has
you're
literally
late
the
and
whole
you haven't
movie
watched the
uses
movie
time
yet.
stones
It's
and
like
just
came out 2
doesn't.
months
Even
ago.
though we
You
should see
probably watched
Thanos'
that,
plans
but
for
it's
galactic
like
genocide coming a
I
mile
haven't
away,
watched the
and he has
movie yet
portals that are
because
able to rip
I don't
people
have
in half, or at
time.
the very least capture them,
I
which
don't
should
even
make
do
pulling
I
off
don't
the
do nothing with
gauntlet
my life.
very
Okay,
easy.
no,
I
I'm
don't have
here.
an
I don't care
explanation for
anymore.
that. It's movie magic, okay? And Doctor Strange is my favorite Marvel superhero, so he basically gets a free pass all around. No, the problem I had with this movie was none of these things. It was this scene. Did you catch it? It was over in a snap, literally. Thanos snaps his fingers and wipes out half the universe for the sake of resource conservation, like some sort of over-enthusiastic Al Gore. But there's a problem here. The snap itself, the actual act of clicking his fingers like a hulky Dorothy trying to click her heels to get back to Kansas. I mean, come on! He's wearing a giant gauntlet made of uru, a metal. He can't just snap his fingers while he's wearing that, right? Think about every movie you've ever seen where people are wearing metal armor. Every Game of Thrones episode. Heck, every British period piece where they wear those dainty tea gloves. Nobody is snapping in those things. I mean, I can't even unlock my cell phone when there's a little French fry grease on my fingers, so snapping in a gauntlet is near impossible. And not by the rules of some convoluted comic book universe, but by the basic laws of physics. It's moments like this where I'm like, Marvel, I love you. I count down to every release you have like a 6-year-old counting down to Christmas. But sometimes it's like, do you even science, bro? So I have to call you out, answer the tough yet essential questions here, and show you why Thanos' finishing move is a deafening dud. To the Theorist Mobile! If we want to determine whether you can snap while wearing the Infinity Gauntlet, we should first clarify what's actually making the sound of a snap. Duh, MadPat, a snap is just the sound that your finger makes when it hits your palm. You, the 22-year-old master of acoustics, might be saying, well, let's put that assertion to the test. First, snap your fingers. Now, do the same thing, but hold your index finger, ring finger, and pinky away from your hand. I'm completely serious. Try it now. Everyone all done? It sounds pretty different, right? Keep trying to snap with your fingers in different arrangements. I mean, sure, it still makes a sound when your middle finger hits your palm. It just doesn't make the same kind of snapping sound. And that's because snapping is actually acoustically a lot more complicated than we imagine. It's this thing that most of us learn to do when we're 6 or 7 specifically to use as social currency in first grade, and yet to this day it remains one of these universal mysteries that we don't really understand about our own bodies. So let's unravel that mystery right now. True, the thud of your finger hitting your palm makes a sound, and so does your finger as it moves down your thumb and pops off at the end. But actually, both of those sounds are quiet quiet compared to the popping noise that's made by the air in your hand. Now, that might sound weird, but when you snap, the air that's trapped in your hand is what's making the big sound, or in our case, making half the universe disappear. Let me show you. Look at the shape of your hand when you're getting ready to snap. It should look roughly like this. You'll see that your ring finger and pinky are pressed against your palm, roughly creating a cone that's closed or nearly closed at the bottom. When your middle finger moves towards your palm, the cone changes shape really quickly, which actually forces air up and out of the cone towards your index finger. The reason why most people have a similar hand position when they're snapping is because this cone shape ends up being the best for amplifying sound. The movement out of your hand cone projects sound and the air pressure in one concentrated direction.
I don't know, I like the
This is
sound.
crucial for the snap, and it's actually the same way that the flared end of a horn or a brass instrument works. The more you can compress the air in the cone with your fast middle
Sorry
finger
for all the
movement,
people
the
that
faster
cannot
the air
snap.
will be to rush out of your hand cone, and the louder the snap sounds. That's why when you move your middle finger faster, you get a louder snap than when you move your middle finger slower. If you want to snap even louder, you can use two hands. Seriously, it's
What?
called the Persian snap. And while the YouTube tutorials I found were hopeless in teaching me how to do it effectively, you can hear for yourself how loud it can be. So here's the rub. Thanos
That's
is
loud.
actually creating this shape with his hands. He's actually got pretty good form going into the snap. So shouldn't he be able to create a great sound at the climactic moment? Well, no. Because if you thought that physics has already ruined snapping for you ain't seen nothing yet. More sciencing! The second issue is one that was actually recognized in the movie, or at least in the movie filming. Josh Brolin, the actor who plays Thanos, reveals that when he was doing motion capture for the movie, the Infinity Gauntlet was represented by a hockey glove, and that posed some problems.
And to snap with hockey gloves on, it just doesn't work.
So does that mean it would be impossible to snap while wearing any kind of glove on a hand, including one that's blinged out with magical rocks? Well, not necessarily. One of the issues with snapping while wearing gloves is that your fingers create less friction with the snapping motion. Basically, they're more slippery, which means that the air in the cone never gets a good pop. Relative to gloves, human skin has a high coefficient of friction, meaning that you actually need a lot of force to get skin to move on other skin. But to give you a comparison, the
After
coefficient
we're
of friction on
finishing
the palm of
doing
your
this
hand is
video, I'm
about
gonna go watch the
0.62.
movie.
The
I'm just gonna
coefficient of
jump right.
friction on
Just gonna
cotton
go out
is
here,
about
get this over with, so
0.51,
I'm
and the
gonna watch.
coefficient of metal, like
It's been
aluminum,
so long,
is
and I just
0.42. Since metal has a
wasted
lower
time,
coefficient of
literally.
friction
So
than
I'm
a
gonna
lot
watch
of
it
other
after
materials,
I'm done
it'll
with this video.
naturally be worse at snapping than almost anything else you could wear. That being said, what you lose in friction, you can actually make up for with sheer force. You can try this at home just with your fingers. Hold your middle finger against your thumb loosely and snap. It's kind of dull and quiet, right? Now press your middle finger really hard against your thumb and snap. It's much louder. By increasing the force required to overcome the friction, you speed up the moving finger, which in turn speeds up the air that's being compressed, which in turn makes the snap
Is this a
louder.
video
Could you do the
teach
same
you how
thing
to
while wearing
snap?
the magical metallic gauntlet? Theoretically, yeah. Especially if you're as strong as a mad titan. The other thing that's actually sitting in Thanos' favor here is metal's ability to conduct sound. Going back to what I said a few minutes ago, that snapping moves air a lot like a brass instrument or a horn, have you ever stopped to wonder why horns are made of metal and brass? Well, it has a lot to do with the fact that metal is actually a great sound conductor. This is because at the molecular level, metal molecules are arranged in a lattice structure, which just means that the molecules repeat in the same patterns over and over and over again. When you have that kind of molecular structure, it's able to carry sound waves through in a very uniform way, preserving the sound wave and either allowing it to bounce right off or projecting it outward. Fabrics like cotton or leather that you might use for other kinds of gloves have a totally different molecular structure because they're polymers. Instead of being able to preserve the sound, polymers, which are long and tangly, break up the sound waves and absorb them, making them really bad sound conductors. That's why fabrics are used to absorb sound. So it seems like everything should be aligning for the Infinity Gauntlet to make one tremendous and thunderous snap like you hear in the movie, except there's one huge factor getting in the way. You know how he said that metals transfer the forces applied to them into the surrounding air? Well, that's assuming that air is the thing that's surrounding them. Again, think about a trumpet or a horn. There's air vibrating inside the horn caused by your mouth blowing all that nice air and spit, and it's transferred to the
Nice
outside
spit.
all along the horn and through the metal's ability to vibrate as the cone widens at the end. The Infinity Gauntlet, though, has a problem, which is that Thanos' hand is in it. If we were able to take his hand out, you'd actually get a lot of reverberation from a snapping sound because the metal would be free to vibrate with air on on either side. But because this is the Infinity Gauntlet and was made specifically for Thanos by the Dwarf King, we know that this gauntlet genuinely fits like a glove. The glove do fit, you can't quit. That means that when Thanos snaps, his fingers inside the gauntlet will actually be deadening his own snap, with most of the sound energy simply being transferred into his own skin. This isn't to say that there won't be any sound when Thanos snaps, just that instead of an actual snap or even a kind of metallic clunk, we're just more likely to get a metal grinding sound from how hard he has to press to get the snap to work in the first place. It's not exactly impressive for the Master of the Universe. After researching all of this for the last couple weeks, I wanted to see if anyone had tested snapping in metal gloves. So as I was literally finishing the last couple sentences of this episode, I found out that my buddy Kyle Hill over on Because Science actually did an episode covering this topic a couple weeks ago. He takes a very different approach to this, where instead of diving into the acoustics, he goes for the practical physics and actually tries on a bunch of different gauntlet recreations from one of my other favorite creators on YouTube, Tony Swanton from Sword in the Stone, who makes all kinds of movie and video game weapons in real life. If you want to see some of the stuff that they put to the test because you just can't get enough of fictional gauntlet physics, well, definitely check that one out. And yes, before you run off to the comments and remind me that Thanos literally has the power of all the universes in his hand so he can make his snap sound like anything he wants. And at the end of the day, remember, it's just a theory. A film theory. And now that you know Thanos' dirty little secret behind his lame finishing move, you can ruin Infinity War for all your friends and family.
Oh my god.
It doesn't have to stop with
No.
Marvel movies. Oh no. There's a whole world of bizarre physics out there to make
Oh my god, they're gonna
everyone
ruin the
you know
movie.
weirded out or paranoid
They're gonna
about
spoil
pretty
it.
much
Oh my
anything you
god.
could ever want. Basically the thesis of Game Theory and Film Theory's channels. In all seriousness, taking the stuff we take for granted every day and learning about how it actually works, whether it's how we snap, why your toaster flips bread in the air, or even why
It's
you can
really
see
about
through
to turn
glass,
this
has
off.
always
It's
been
like
mind-blowing to me.
not
If
gonna
you're
hear
into
that.
the same kinds of things as I am, well, you need to check out our sponsor for today's episode, which is audible.com, where you
Okay.
can tap into an entire
So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'm literally gonna upload this video and gonna watch it right now.